Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Jason Mackey's First 10, Friday edition. Going to do a little Q&A action. Always enjoy these. A lot of great questions that we will get to right away. But first, I want to remind you that we're sponsored by the North Shore Tavern. You don't have to be a baseball fan to love it there. The interior is wall-to-wall Pirates. There are appetizers, entrees, cocktails, and, of course, steak and seafood on a sizzling lava stone. Open every day. The North Shore Tavern across from PNC Park is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. I saw all of that myself firsthand. Took my family to the Pirates game last night, just watching as a dad, and we grabbed some dinner over there. Always a good time. All right, a lot of Pirates questions to get to. Sort of figured that was coming. Brandon Higley asks, what is more likely, the Pirates trade for a starting first baseman, center fielder, good reliever, or they sneak into that third wild card spot? I guess if I'm understanding this question correctly, Brandon, it's do they make the trade or do they sneak into the spot? I guess I would put make the trade. Just because I do think that's something that the Pirates recognize is a weak spot. Probably all three of them, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know what I would put above the rest. I think they need all of them. I do think the Pirates view this year as important. Like I don't think this is viewed as a transition year or, they're going to kick the can to 2025 or something like that. I don't think, they're not going to go all out and add $50 million worth of payroll. Of course, I'm not saying that, but do they want to win? Do they think they can win? Do they recognize what is in front of them with Paul Skenes, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, the pitching situation? To a degree, yes. A lot of times their actions are not going to be quite what fans want or expect, which, I understand the Pirate side. I understand the fan side, but I'm just, they're not going to load up and sell the farm. But do they see a weak spot at first in the outfield, a reliever? Yeah, it's very possible. I just think we're a little bit early for when that stuff typically happens, but I don't think it's crazy to think that could occur. And that third wild card spot, I realize that, they're under 500 and they're technically in last place, but they're not that far out of the wild card spot. I don't see anybody else competing for that position that is, heads and shoulders above them. When you have a rotation the way they do, that puts them in such an excellent spot to do things. So we'll see, but I do think it gets addressed in some way. Ben Engelman asks a good question. Got me thinking a little bit. Is there a true all-star on this team? Now, I wrote recently about Paul Skenes having a chance at the All-Star game, and I genuinely believe that's the case. Jared Jones has put himself in that conversation. Mitch Keller has put himself in that conversation. Now, we've got a little bit to go, and I honestly feel pretty good about the chances of two of those three winding up there. I think MLB would love to get Paul Skenes in Arlington, Texas, and what a draw and attention getter he would be. And if it ends up being Jared Jones and Paul Skenes, that's pretty darn cool. That being said, Mitch Keller's been absolutely outstanding since about the start of May. All-star level good. His ERA is under 2. It's only 1 and a little bit of change off the top of my head, but we'll see where this goes. Somebody else I think is a fascinating study here is Nick Gonzales. Somebody asked me last night during the game, does Gonzales have a chance? And at first I'm like, you're crazy. What are you drinking? And the more I thought about it, if Nick Gonzales has another month like he has, why can't he? He'd be hitting 320 plus with 40 ribs or something like that, at a position that sometimes lacks offense. There's a lot there to like. We're a long way from that, but he certainly put himself in that conversation. I'm liking more and more what I see from Gonzales in terms of, bat to ball stuff outside the zone, handling all kinds of pitches. I think we saw that last night on his home run. He's just, his mechanics are much more simple. He's more direct. That's something he's worked with for years. Hands quicker, bat in the zone longer. He's just giving himself a great opportunity to make consistent contact, and Nick hasn't always done that. Zach Henry asks, is there any update on Mike Burrows, his recovery from TJ? Also, it seems like many of their top offensive prospects are faltering in the minors. What can that be attributed to? If it was Juan, okay, seemingly all of their top offensive prospects are having their worst seasons. A couple things. Mike Burrows, was due back at the end of July, beginning of August. He was about 3-4 weeks behind Brubaker, and Brubaker was right after the All-Star break. So there's nothing wrong. We probably are due an update Todd Tomzik is due to speak to beat reporters and probably me and whoever else is there. That's been postponed a couple times, I believe, for some personal reasons. So we're going to get Todd eventually and learn more. But that, to me, it's not weird yet that we're not hearing a ton on Burrows. I know you're probably just asking for an update, but that's the last known scope of when he could come back, because you're probably looking at mid-August, late August, something like that. So as far as their prospects having their worst offensive seasons, I mean, it's a bit of a generalization, but I will say this, and I think this is probably the point of what you're getting at. You wish there was more position player optimism in the system. I think that's a fair criticism or worry. I look at somebody like Matt Gorski in AAA. He's having a great year, probably a conversation topic for coming up to the big club at some point, but it's kind of an outlier. You'd like to see, more from Tamar Johnson, more from Sung-Chi Cheng. Jack Brannigan, maybe, Shailene Polanco. Like, these are just some names off the top of my head, but it's been a little bit quiet. It's been a little bit quiet results wise. I'm not sure there's anything that I'm gonna fully freak out about or something like that. Give me a second to pull up their top 30. And one sort of cheat code as a beat writer, not a cheat code, but something that is probably unique to me. I can't remember this stuff without looking at it. If I look at any MLB standings, I have to naming teams, coming up with lists. I have to have it in front of me. I have to look at who we're talking about. So, Mitch Jebb, Lonnie White Jr., Polanco was another one. I mean, they've had some quiet production. Jace Bowen's another one. I don't think there's any commonality between them. I really don't. I don't want to say they're botching development, because I think that's too broad of a term, and I think they have brought up some young guys in a meaningful way. It's also tough to link something that you see from AA to AAA to rookie ball to low A, something like that. It's fair to want more production, but I'm not sure I have a great explanation for why it's kind of been that way. So, all right, let's get to a couple more here. Here's one. At Pittsburgh Prinny, it's Buck and Prinny. At what point did they admit their 5-year plan was a failure and the team is still nowhere close to competing for the division title? If they can't keep trash bin driving, they need to open the checkbook. Oh boy. I'm not saying everything's great, but everything's not terrible. Like, they are set up, if you think about it, for the next 5-6 years with a top 3 in their rotation that is Paul Skenes, Jared Jones, and Mitch Keller. They've got Brian Reynolds, David Bednar, Ke'Bryan Hayes under contract. Oneil Cruz, there's a lot of potential there. I'm not saying it gets figured out, but they have a catcher they took 1-1 that I think that the jury's still out on, but he can be very good. I think what people need to sort of internalize or think about, look at Nick Gonzales. Like, there was a lot of he's done, get rid of him, this like negative fan reaction to it. He comes back and then look. Sometimes it just takes some time. Like, Quinn Priester might fall into that category. Henry Davis could fall into that category. Jack Sawinski could fall into that category. I don't know if they will or not, but it took some time with Mitch Keller too. A lot of people wrote him off. I guess I say all that to say to the question, it's not perfect. This team has flaws, but I would also argue that everything's not terrible. Everything's not screwed. There's no time to, admit this 5-year plan is a failure and fire everybody and just get rid of everybody and start over again. Like, no, they've got some good stuff to hang on to. They've also got some stuff to improve, and they have some weak spots that you'd want to admit they exist and address them accordingly. But everything is not terrible, I swear. Pierre Beta at Pierre_Beta asks, how do the Pirates fix the mess that their bullpen is at the moment? I don't know if I'd say it's a mess. I mean, it's kind of reacting off of a rough game last night from Ben Heller. I'm not sure that Ben Heller is an answer there. One interesting thing going off of this as we talk about the bullpen, I think they probably signed Aroldis Chapman thinking that, if things don't go terribly well, they're able to trade him. Well, we're in a situation where I'm not sure it makes any sense to trade Chapman. They need him. They need him to get right. And he hasn't pitched all that well. Is somebody going to want to take the balance of a $10.5 million contract? I'm not sure. Colin Holderman has been good. David Bednar has righted the ship, but the rest of their bullpen, hence the question, has not been good enough. So what do? I mean, at this point, a bullpen arm is on my very short list for stuff I want to see them do at the deadline. I think they're, an arm away. It would certainly help. If he's left-handed, might not hate that. So I don't think they're maybe a mess is a little bit strong. Does the bullpen need some additional depth? Yes. It would be really great if you could have guys like Hunter Stratton, Kyle Nicholas, Carmen Mlodzinski, young right-handers who have shown signs in the past, who haven't pitched particularly well of late, kind of figure it out. Thoughts on Cruz in right field and Peguero to shortstop? Michael Vero asks, not in season. Not in season. I'm not making that transition. I understand the defense hasn't been good with Cruz, and if we make some assumptions and get to the end of the season, I'm going to try to move him off the position. I don't think he gives them enough defensively there. For right now, I can live with it. And I went into this season thinking I want to give Oneil a fair shot at shortstop and see what he can do over 162 or as many of those as he can play. If he can prove to me that he can play shortstop, he can stay there. Right now, I don't see enough to keep him there. And so we're going to have, at least in my mind, I hope it turns, and I hope that conversation never happens, because that would be a cool story, seeing him stay at that position. But he just hasn't played well enough defensively to justify it in my mind. And so, yeah, I mean, at that point, I would look at, right field, center field, somewhere in the outfield. I would not move him to first base. I don't like the idea of moving him or Henry to first base, because I think you're wasting your arms, but wasting their arms. I would do it after the season. Robert Sir, thoughts on a Vince Velasquez reunion would help the bullpen to the back end of the rotation. He's got to be close to coming back. Yeah, he's also going to be coming into, it probably wouldn't be pitching much based on coming back from a second TJ and the internal brace thing that they did. He'd be somewhat limited, but I don't know. Does he want to sign for the major league minimum to kind of be a tweener guy? I don't hate it. And here's why I bring that up. There's an interesting thing with the Pirates where Jared Jones is probably not going to go wire to wire, making every single start, going 5, 6, 7 innings. That's going to far exceed his total from last year and where they want him to land. They're going to cap Paul Skenes at some point. Now, I think the Pirates did a good thing by delaying his start and, try to keep him within range. What they want to avoid is a Steven Strasburg level shutdown. How do you get there? And I think one way could be maybe a 6-man rotation. Maybe some oddball delaying starts and getting creative to kind of push those back. If you have, what I mean is like Mitch on a 5-day and you try to have somebody you can bring up and bump somebody back. I don't know if that fits Velasquez. Vince, based on service time, I believe would, whatever he signed, he would not have options remaining. I could be wrong on that. I'm not looking at that right now, but they might need to add somebody or get somebody to space that out. Maybe it's Domingo Germán. I don't know. But you might need another arm here to make sure that your two young studs don't go over what you basically don't want to have more than a 20% overage. That's the MLB axiom or rule that teams operate by. So to do that, you might need another arm. Is it Vince? I don't know. I liked watching him pitch. I thought there was something here. I think the Pirates learned how to use him. I can't say that I've talked to Vince Velasquez recently to find out how his rehab is going, but it's an interesting idea. And I brought it up just to touch on the other thing. Sports Watcher at Watch PGA Sports. I'm the biggest Henry Davis supporter, but at what point is the Pirates organization concerned over his struggles at the plate? Sure, the Pirates moved him around the diamond, but I figured his hit tool would play more than it has. I would argue that you might not be the biggest Henry Davis supporter if you're looking to bury his career after 2 games back up here. That you don't need to be a Henry Davis supporter. You can think he stinks, but I think he deserves more than what he's had up here before we determine anything. It was not good early on. I certainly understand that. He was not the only one who struggled. He's had 2 games. He's been up here this time around. 1 for 7 in those 2 games. Not great. Certainly understand it with a double. I'm not making any assertions based on 2 games. I think that's unrealistic. I just want to see it play out. I want Henry to hit enough to justify keeping him up here and playing him a lot, because I think he needs the time. Look, he's drafted 1-1 for a reason. Even if the Pirates went with a unique draft strategy, and if you would have taken the best player available, maybe Henry doesn't go there. He's still at the very top of that draft. He's an incredibly talented kid. He works his tail off. Baseball-wise, he's still relatively young. He has, in his career, I get asked about this a lot. I look at it. How many games has he? He's played a grand total of 87 games. He's had 300 at-bats in MLB. That is a fraction of what is normal. So I just give it time. Just give it a little bit of time. Look at Nick Gonzales. Sometimes it takes some time to figure it out. I would not be, just ending things with Henry Davis. All right, went over as usual on Friday. I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a nuisance. Appreciate, as always, you watching and listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can get this content and a ton more from our Post-Gazette writers and columnists. Hope you have a great weekend and talk to you back here on Monday.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.